over the break, I thought, hey, everyone's talking about, and I keep getting questions from people about, will AI take over Python? Will it take over coding? Will developers become irrelevant and redundant? And so all these people who are saying, yeah, of course it's going to happen. It can write code. Look how well it writes code and all these different things. I thought, screw it, why not? So I know a bit of Django. Why not see how it goes? Hello and welcome to the Pybites Podcast, where we talk about Python, career, and mindset. We're your hosts. I'm Julian Sequeira.
And I am Beldebos. If you're looking to improve your Python, your career, and learn the mindset for success, this is the podcast for you. Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Pybites Podcast. Just kicking it off. Happy 2025.
Hey, man. How you going?
Good.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Pybites Podcast 2025. This is our very first episode of the year. First one in almost a month. The last one we recorded was December 20th, and it's now 15th of January. So it's been quite a while, man, since we got on the microphone and had a chat. So first of all, Happy New Year to you and to everyone listening. And tell me, man, what did you get up to over the holidays? We took 2 solid weeks off, right?
Yeah, almost 2.5 weeks. Crazy, right? So started with a bit of coding, but that quickly disappeared. There are definitely other things in life. So no, it was great. A lot of reading. I read almost a whole trilogy of, they say trilogy? Trilogy. Yeah, of cool. the 3-body problem. And amazing nice. Sci-fi. We really got hooked on sci-fi. So because that makes sense, because I always loved the cosmos and action and stuff, and now I finally get hooked to sci-fi. So to be continued. Yeah, but really good saga. That's really mind expanding. You know.
It frustrates me because you first of all you made me buy all 3 of them, so I have them on my bookshelf now, ready to go. But I'm frustrated because we've known each other for 15 years, and I have read countless sci-fi in that time and told you about it. Not once did you try. And then watching the Netflix series got you.
No, it was before. It was actually a random purchase. Somebody recommended the first one in Portland, and it was on my shelf for years. You know.
So you trusted someone else over me. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Let's move on. From this. No,
family time. It was great. And we got back and refreshed, and we did goal setting, but we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What about you?
No, same, man. I mean, we talked through WhatsApp and stuff over the holidays, but for everyone listening, we, on my end, it's summer over here as well, when we celebrated Christmas and New Year's and my birthday at the start of January. It was beautiful and hot beach weather. We're just constantly out. It was super busy. We were constantly with family. My brother was here from America. It was a lot of fun. But there were a couple of days that we had a brief respite from all of the family chaos, and it was nice to just sit down and relax. And from a hobby perspective, I actually did some coding, which we'll talk about in this episode. So I'm going to talk some code in a bit, but I actually really dove into my home automation and did so much of my home automation using Home Assistant. To those listeners who, I know plenty of people in our community use it. So I really dove into that and, storyboarded some ideas and how to automate things with my garage and just solve a lot of the little problems that we had around the house that I've always wanted to, but we just didn't have time throughout the year because we're constantly, switched on with Pybites. So it was nice to fully switch off. I really enjoyed it. It's good.
Awesome. Cool. So now it's 2025 and we got back into sound habits, right? Like, do we want to, I guess we can talk a bit about habits and goals.
Yeah. I think, look, we'll talk code in a minute, but we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk to everyone about, this is the time of the year when everyone, every podcast, every video, every YouTuber, everything that you encounter is going to be talking about new year, new you, and all these goals and things like that, But ultimately all it comes down to, it's not about spending money. It's not about starting some crazy new diet and all these kinds of things. It's about the same old habits that, you and I, Bob, have talked about for ages. So what's the recommendation for people here?
Have a deliberate goal. Although the goals and habits are interesting, right? Like, for example, with the fitness, I'm back on track. Now, I did 5 workouts last week. I did 3 workouts out of 5 this week. So I'm on track. I'm building that habit. And yes, it takes like 21 days, right, to build a habit. But I don't have a goal. Well, there's kind of a goal to lose weight, but I don't have that strongly in mind. It's more like, I think Atomic Habits talks about that, like, you need to build that identity, right? Like, I'm a guy that is fit, that works out, that has an agile body and stuff, right? And that for me is enough. Although I also think they sell you so much sugar over the break, not for the sugar, but to get you to realize that you need to get into sound habits. But anyway, I don't know. It's for me, it just have been, for example, with the exercising, put that in early in the morning and just, it sucks. It's cold now here. But do it enough times and it becomes like automatic. And that's the place you want to be. So that for me is the habit story.
Yeah, no. And, if I'm going to look at this from an outsider, I actually think that your goal here, whether you've realized it or not, is just to feel good, right? It's to feel better because of how sluggish we both felt after the holidays with the excessive, eating and drinking that comes along with all these different events.
Well, and even before, I think we fell off the bandwagon with exercising and stuff.
And just being overwhelmed with work and all of that sort of thing. So I think what we've both realized as we picked up exercise again at the start of this year is just how good you feel during and after it. I mean, in the moment you are kind of, oh my God, one more rep, you want to die. But the feeling after it, you don't want to lose that. And so you want to build this habit to keep it going. And so the tip from me for anyone who's going to kick off something new or try to make a change for the year and all those New Year's resolutions is to just build the space to form that habit. So create that space, whether it be, as Bob, as you're doing, first thing in the morning, get up and do it. The night before, if it's going to be exercise, put your workout clothes on your bed, at the foot of your bed, so that when you get out of bed, the first thing you do is put them on. They're already out and ready. And then you kind of make that subconscious choice of like, well, I'm not going to put them away. I may as well put them on and then go do the workout, So build these tiny little habits that will allow you to continue the larger habit and create that environment for success, because it doesn't matter how much money you throw at this stuff. If you don't have the discipline and the persistence to keep at it and try it, even if it's just small chunks. So my first workout for this year was 15 minutes. That's all I could manage. I was definitely feeling it. I think I'd had a drink the night before, so I was a bit dry the next morning, and it wasn't fantastic, but I got up, I did it, and the next day it wasn't 15 minutes, it was 20. And now the workout that I did today was half an hour, which is my limit because of work and everything. But it worked out that I could build this habit through that very small incremental change. And now I feel so good about it that after this, I don't want to go and grab a beer or a bag of chips or something. I just want a glass of water. I just want to chill out, have maybe a cup of tea and just relax, I don't feel the need to go and have some junk food with it.
Yeah, it's cool how it has a ripple effect, right? Like now you're eating more healthy, you're feeling more fit, you're probably more disciplined with work. So it's almost like the enabler of all the rest. 2 more tips. Set a trigger, right? Like for me, 10 to 8, an alarm goes off, and then I usually do my reading first, and then I know I need to stop reading. It starts with that 10 to 8 to have that discipline to drop the Kindle and get my clothes on and stuff. And that's already half of the battle, right? And the only thing you have to do then go out. And once you're there, it's not a problem anymore, right? But it's that you need that trigger, right? And the other thing, as you already mentioned, is not perfectionated, right? Like I have a set of exercise I want to do, but if one day I get 60-70% done because I'm out of time, then it's still better to have that partial workout than it is then to skip it, because you not only skipped it, but now you endanger the momentum, right? Because momentum with this is everything. And we're talking about fitness, and we're not a fitness coaching company, but this equally applies to coding, right? When you build up that habit.
Exactly. It applies to anything that you want to do this year, including the guitar, right? Or the coding or whatever it might be. If you don't set the time, if you don't set those triggers, build the habit, then and the space to do it, then it's never going to happen, right? So you really have to think about when and how you're going to do it first. So it might even involve a little planning on your part first. Don't just download an app and think, yes, this is done. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have the exactly what I want by the end of this year. So that's probably our biggest guidance. But with regards to goals, if we were to share, we won't dive into our goals for Pybites and everything. But what we've done is this year we did a goal setting session together last week, which was really fun, and just it really gives you energy, right? So I encourage you to sit down and do a session, but make them big. Why not? Make the overall goals lofty, reach for the stars kind of things, And so if, you set a goal to get a promotion and become super senior, whatever it might happen to be, then if you don't achieve that, but all the steps involved that you break it down to what do I need to do to get there, if you only get 70% done by the end of the year of 2025, you'll probably earn at least a pay rise. You may not get the stuff, the kind of title for the promotion that you want, but you might get a pay rise instead, which is pretty good, So my encouragement is set some big goals for yourself and then understand that you need to break those down into pieces to be able to achieve them. So what are the steps to get you to that goal, and then just start chipping them off one by one.
Yeah. Now, what I really liked about the exercise is indeed that you have that opportunity to think big and not be modest. And you're almost, putting stuff down that you think are impossible, right?
Yeah.
But as you say, right, you aim for the stars and you land on the moon. Then even if you partially hit those goals, you're still going to hit it big,
Yeah.
It's very, I think that's it.
It's what I'll add to that is that it's when you have those things down on paper or in a Vim notepad file, text file like us, then you've at least thought about them. So when you take action during the day on anything, it'll often come back to you and make you think, is this task getting me closer to that goal? Yeah. And then you can kind of prioritize your day, and you can think to yourself, did I do one thing today to get me closer to that goal, whether it's pick up the phone, send an email, I don't know, write a page in a book, whatever it happens to be, and if you can do one thing every day, then you see how that compounding effect, how it goes. And it's highly motivating when you look back then and see where you came from. So
you plan it in the subconscious. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, so I know we've done plenty of episodes on this stuff, so we're going to drop it there.
We have our productivity course. I think we just covered half of that. So
you just got our productivity course for free. Damn it! Yeah. Go and buy it.
Talk a lot about that. Yeah, habits, triggers, goals, procrastination. So might want to check it out.
Yeah, worth it. Totally worth it. So code-wise, do you mind if I kick this story?
Yeah, you tell us the Django story. What happened?
Okay, so I had this idea between Christmas and New Year's. I've had this app idea to just build some glorified spreadsheet. I won't go into the details of what it is, but it was just an idea to experiment with Django, and I just don't have the time. It's not that I don't have the time. I can't prioritize the time to do it. We've got enough to do. And so over the break, I thought, hey, everyone's talking about, and I keep getting questions from people about, will AI take over Python? Will it take over coding? Will developers become irrelevant and redundant? And so all these people who are saying, yeah, of course it's going to happen. It can write code. Look how well it writes code and all these different things. I thought, screw it, why not? So I know a bit of Django. Why not see how it goes? So I wrote an extensive prompt. So first of all, let's start with that. I had to write an extensive prompt. I couldn't just say, build me a Django app that does X, right? I had to give it some guidance. I had to tell it, break the entire app down into these feature chunks, and let's work through each feature one at a time. So first and foremost, if you're going to be using AI, you really have to think, put some deep thought into those prompts. So forgetting that, I did that, and I was actually quite impressed. It started setting up the virtual environment in Python. First of all, just a normal virtual environment, just fine. It knew I was using
UV? No UV?
no UV.
It should retrain that stuff. We all should be using UV right now.
No, it just gave me a nice vanilla Python virtual venv, right? Okay. And I'm sorry, I've offended you. And then it started walking through just setting up a Django application, right? So create application, whatever the command is, I can't even remember. But it started doing it and it did it well. And I was really impressed. I'm like, this is great. And if I didn't understand something, I could ask it and it would tell me what that was. So I thought, this is great. I see how this is working. I like it. Then when it came to the feature, as opposed to the bare bones framework of a Django app, as soon as it started building that first feature, that first app in Django, that's when it started to show some cracks and things started to fall to pieces. So it is not great at explaining every single step accurately. It will assume that you know, even though I told it, treat me like a complete beginner. And it kept missing things. And the only reason I caught that is because I have pre-existing knowledge of Django. So a perfect example was it was telling me to add stuff to settings.py. And you don't have to understand what that does for the sake of the story. But then the next prompt said add XYZ, whatever the code was. But looking at that line of code, I knew that that line of code should go in the urls.py file, not settings.py. So it had skipped the step where it should have told me now save and quit that file, go to urls.py and put this line of code in there. And I know that seems insignificant, but what I want to point out here is that the point of this exercise was to show me whether AI could completely take over the job of a developer in building stuff from scratch. And when you have errors like that or mistakes like that that a complete beginner would never catch, because they would have taken that second line of code and put it in settings.py, which would have just created all sorts of confusion, you can't trust it. So I had to tell it, hang on, are you sure this line is supposed to go in settings.py? I didn't even allude to where it should go, and it did pick that up and it'd say, oh, my mistake. Sorry, good catch. That should go on urls.py. And this happened time and time again. Quite a few times there was shouldn't I run a make migrations before I continue this step? Oh, yes, my mistake. Run this command to do that. Hang on a minute. We shut down the server, the run server command. Shouldn't we restart the server to implement these changes? Oh, yes, you're exactly right. We should do that. So these are things that beginners will not catch. And the reason I really wanted to share this is because this reiterates our point that we've said many times before. AI is not going to take your job. It's not going to take over. It cannot, because there is an element of trust that we don't have for it, and it's in its accuracy. And I personally don't think we'll ever get to that point where we 100% trust every single thing it puts out, because it is so prone to mistakes at the moment. Who knows, in 10 years, people say, well, it'll keep getting better and better. And I agree it will, but I still feel like there's always going to be this element of needing to put a human in there for fact checking and to make sure. So, just the final thing, Bob, before I hand back to you is it stalled the entire app. The end result of this, where I just gave up and said, Happy New Year 2025, was where this thing could not get itself out of a loop, of a failure loop that it created. So it told me to put code in, bulk put it in files in a specific way, and it couldn't figure out why I was getting 404 errors when I was running the server. It just could not figure it out. So... Yeah,
and you didn't actually put in the errors. You didn't ask it to.
Oh, I pasted everything. I pasted all the files. Yeah. Exactly. I did everything I could, and it just kept repeating itself, saying, "Oh, yes, if you do things this way," and then it would repeat the exact same thing it said.
Yeah, sometimes it goes before. Like in an infinite loop, right?
Yeah. So
was that
I would
ChatGPT
have to.
Or
this was Windows Copilot, the one that comes on Windows 11 on your desktop.
But isn't that using GPT-4 anyway?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I think it is. So
interesting. Yeah.
So I will share that repo with you, and we can go through it and we can have a look at what it did. But yeah, that was just my experiment to play. I was very curious to see what it could do. And it just proved to me that this is not going to take over as your primary developer. So just a reminder then, Bob, because I've been talking for a while, how would you suggest people use it? I know we've said this before, but I think it bears repeating.
Yeah, I do think you should use it, though. It will make you a lot more productive. And so there was a bit of discussion in the community, like, should I use it over reading the docs? And although docs are great, I have an example where I went AI first and then backed it up with the docs, right? So I built this little Reflex app, and I hadn't really used Reflex as a framework that lets you write web apps in pure Python, no JavaScript, right? Because we don't like to write JavaScript generally. But then, yeah, I come in with web development experience, right? So it is a bit different. But I do think the approach can be general. So I did read 5 to 10 minutes in the documentation just to get a general overview. And documentation is great, right? But then I started to build something. And we always say, like, as soon as possible, start to build something. Because when you have to apply concepts to a real world app or something more practical, tangible, it's going to be difficult, right? And yeah, I did get stuck, and the AI did mislead me, and it did make mistakes because it might not, because Reflex is pretty new. So I expect it has less training data. And that's important to know, right? It doesn't know anything. It's a predictor. So it's only as good as the data it's trained on. So if it has less training data, it might be less reliable, right? But anyway, I got it done in the end. But yeah, it took quite some troubleshooting and back and forth. And similar to your story, when I had the app and I wanted to break it down into steps to teach it, it completely missed the step where I had to use Alembic to make the migrations and do the migrations. I'm like, well, we just defined a model. In order to use it, should I make migrations and run migrate to have it today? Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I was wrong.
Yeah.
So take everything with a grain of salt, because it can be very confident in its tone while being completely wrong, right? So yeah, I would still encourage it to use it, because then I built something end to end, was working, then went back to the docs, made way more sense, right? So sometimes if you only read the docs, it's a form of tutorial paralysis, and it doesn't click, right? So that's why we say always build something, and then AI can really help you. But yeah, of course, it will be a back and forth, and it can only partially help you, right? Because I could debug it faster because I have done a lot of web development. So yeah, to what would you? So that's from an experienced developer perspective. Definitely boost my productivity. What about the new coders, programmers, where they don't have that experience? Would you then suggest using it more from explain me this, explain me that type?
Yep, exactly. I would not ask it to teach me something from scratch. Don't say teach me Python, for example. I would start learning Python myself. You could potentially use that, right? You could say, teach me the basics of Python, treat me like I'm a 7-year-old, or whatever the general guidance is for these kinds of things. But the main thing is to clarify, ask it to clarify what you don't understand. If you're a beginner, I would get coding, read some trusted material just to get started, use our newbie bites, just going to throw that out there, to teach you the basics where you're actually coding. Because reading from ChatGPT is and any AI LLM is just the same as reading a book, right? I mean, unless you're applying what you learn, it's not going to stick. So I would use it just like any other developer should, as an assistant. You write the code and you ask it to help fill in the blanks. You ask it to clarify the things that you don't understand. You ask it for ideas. You could say, look, I need to connect this database with this source, or whatever it happens to be. What would be the most efficient way of doing that? What would be a library? Actually, I asked it the other day on behalf of a friend. I said, what library would I use? I forget, what library would be best to use to do some photo compression using Python. And it came up and told me, and I was like, and it wasn't, I thought it was going to be like Pillow or something like that. But it was something I hadn't seen in ages. I don't even remember what it is, but I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. And I checked it out and read the docs and was like, oh, this would actually work. So that's the kind of thing that you can use it for, right? And that you should use it for. You should shortcut these questions that you have. Even get it to write some basic template code. But if there is a single line in there that you don't understand, ask it. Ask it to clarify, because you shouldn't be just blindly putting in code that you don't understand as a developer. I think that's doing everyone a discredit if you do that. Opening loopholes, creating security vulnerabilities if you don't actually understand the code that you're taking from it.
Yeah. Also, if you ask it to tackle something too wide, like build me an app and very generic, it's not that great. But if you're very specific, write me this piece of functionality and have a very detailed prompt, but that again comes with experience, being able to specify it well or define it well, then it can be great.
And then test it.
Then test it. Yeah.
Exactly.
But you end up debugging anyway, and that's a skill in itself. But yeah, it's also great for summarizing articles, for example, right? There's a very specific request, a very specific input that does it very well. Or give me 10 ideas to, promote this podcast, then it really comes up with some good stuff, right? So for analysis, investigation, it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
For coding, it's great as well, but yeah, you have to be very specific and maybe use it more as an explanatory tool, and at most have it write you boilerplate that you understand, and then you iterate over it. I think that's it.
Exactly. Cool. Well, there we go. We put that to bed. That's it. End of the discussion. No one's ever going to talk about this again. So
yeah, no more AI in 25. We just use it. We won't ever talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's done. I think that's the end of AI for humanity. Yeah. I think we've seen the last of it.
We don't want your inputs though. We made a little form to get some ideas, what you like to hear, who you like to get on our podcast. So it takes you 1 minute to fill out. We'll link it below. And please let us know, because we make this podcast for you, and we want to make sure. We also want to up the cadence, right? Like not every 2 weeks, but should be every week again. Should be on point. Julian, Bob, us.
We can talk.
The frequency has gone down a little bit, but we definitely want to have that cadence. But it will help if you give us that feedback, because then we can start planning and give it more, focus and effort. Because it's one of the coolest things we have, I think, the podcast.
Yeah, we enjoy doing it too. We love giving back with this podcast, and it gives us an excuse to talk. So if you have a look at the form as well, one of the questions is to let us know what you would like to hear about, not just the guests, right? So don't feel like you have to know someone you want to hear on the podcast. It's also your chance to ask questions. I put some leading questions in there. What is a skill that you're struggling with? What is something happening in your career that you'd love some advice on? These kinds of things. And obviously it's all anonymized, but please pour anything you want in there, and we will have a read when we see those coming in. So
it can be Python, programming, career, mindset, productivity. It's much more than just Python. Strong focus on developer mindset, I would say. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so we got like 2 minutes left, Bob, before we have to run. So what are you reading?
Yeah, so I did sci-fi over the break, and now I'm getting into technical reading again. I want to pick up Rust a bit again, even if it's only from a conceptual thing, because I want to, revive the Rust platform. 10 exercises want to grow to 50. So I'm reading Code Like a Pro in Rust on Manning. And I'm also reading 99 Bottles of OOP, which Chris May recommended a while ago on this podcast. And that's great for, the design patterns and how to write quality code and stuff. So yeah, those are great.
Cool. Keeping the technical stuff up. I like it. Nice, man.
I have to.
Someone has to. It's not going to be me.
What are you reading?
So look, I didn't have the luxury of at some point during the holidays having no children. So and if anything, we got extra children these holidays. So at one point we had 5 kids in the house. So I didn't get to read much at all, but I've continued reading, trying to read a chapter every day or two of the Welcome to the Haenam Dong bookshop it's a Korean book that I picked up. I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I've continued reading that. But I also picked up an intriguing book that I cannot wait to finish this one and dive into called The Everything War. And it's essentially a book, an expose that was written last year, I think 2024, maybe 2023. No, 2024, essentially about the Amazon and its shoddy practices and how it's just steamrolled everything. It's, destroyed small businesses and all their kind of business practices. I don't know. I haven't read the book, so I just reading the blurb on the back, I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. Because as you all know, I worked for them for almost 8 years. So this is kind of nice to see someone actually having the guts to write something about, critical about them, which is you need to have that balance. People aren't willing to do it because there's a bit of fear in there. So I'm looking forward to reading that when I'm done this book. So there you go.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I would be curious about that one. Yeah.
See what happens. But all right, well, that's it from us. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for always tuning in. Continue to do it in 2025. Anything from you, Bob?
No, let's just keep growing the podcast and Happy New Year. Yeah, let's
nice.
Get back to work.
Excellent. We'll see you in the community. Cheers.
Right. Cheers. Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the Pybites Podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. A quick message from me and Bob before you go. To get the most out of your experience with Pybites, including learning more Python, engaging with other developers, learning about our guests, discussing these podcast episodes, and much, much more, please join our community at pybites.circle.so. The link is on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube, and it's in the show notes for everyone else. When you join, make sure you introduce yourself, engage with myself and Bob, and the many other developers in the community. It's one of the greatest things you can do to expand your knowledge and reach and network as a Python developer. We'll see you in the next episode, and we will see you in the community.